The nightmare always started the same way. Cold steel against her wrists. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead, sterile and unforgiving. A voice, deep and commanding, cutting through the fog of her semi-consciousness like a scalpel through flesh. Subject 7, state your mission. Her own voice responded, flat and mechanical, stripped of everything human. Eliminate, retrieve, return. Good, and if you encounter resistance. Eliminate, retrieve, return. The light grew brighter, burning white-hot, and then came the pain. Not physical. Worse. The sensation of her mind being pulled apart, memories extracted like teeth, replaced with something foreign, something that didn't quite fit. Sarah Mitchell woke gasping, her t-shirt soaked with sweat despite the air conditioning blasting through the female barracks at Fort Hood. Her fingers flew to her wrists, tracing the faint scars there. Thin white lines, barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness. IV marks, maybe, or restraints. She had asked the doctors about them once 2 years ago, right after the accident. Memory loss, they had said. Severe head trauma from the rollover. Lucky to be alive. The scars would fade. They hadn't. She sat up slowly, willing her heart to stop hammering. Just a dream. The same one she'd had 3 times this week. 5 times last month. Her therapist, Dr. Reeves, insisted it was her mind processing trauma, filling in blanks with manufactured fear. Post-traumatic stress from an accident she couldn't even remember. Sarah reached for her journal on the nightstand, the leather cover worn smooth from 2 years of nightly entries. Writing helped, Dr. Reeves said. Anchored her to reality when memories felt slippery. She flipped to a clean page, dated it March 7th, and began writing by the pale glow of her phone screen. Another nightmare. Same voice. Same words. I wish I could remember what happened before the accident. Dr. Reeves says some memories are better left buried, but how do you know who you are when you can't remember where you came from? She paused, pen hovering. Something felt wrong, not with the words themselves, but with the act of writing them. Her grip shifted at night sometimes. The letters slanted at an odd angle, tighter, more controlled, military precision. Sarah flipped back through previous entries. Most were in her normal handwriting, loose and flowing. But scattered throughout, maybe 1 page in 10, the script changed. She had noticed it before but dismissed it as fatigue, different pens, stress. Now looking closer, she saw patterns. Every 7th or 8th entry the handwriting shifted, and the content changed too. Less personal reflection, more observation, guard rotations, weapons inventory counts, supply shipment schedules. Information a medic would have no reason to track. Her stomach turned cold. She flipped further back, trembling now, and found an entire page she didn't remember writing. The date was 2 weeks ago. The handwriting was the precise, mechanical version, and the words made her blood freeze. Day 43. Integration successful. No 1 suspects. Target location confirmed. Awaiting activation signal. Sarah slammed the journal shut. Her roommate stirred in the bunk across from her but didn't wake. The clock on the wall read 04:30. 90 minutes until formation. She should try to sleep. Instead, she pulled out her phone and scrolled to the email that had arrived 3 days ago. Subject line, personnel transfer, Fort Sentinel. She had read it a dozen times, trying to understand why she'd volunteered for the posting. Fort Sentinel was a punishment assignment. A dusty outpost on the Texas-Mexico border, understaffed and overlooked, where careers went to die. Yet when she'd seen the posting on the internal system, something had pulled at her. Not excitement, something deeper, recognition. She had clicked accept volunteer before consciously deciding to do it. When she'd asked human resources about it the next day, the specialist had looked confused. "Ma'am, there's no posting for Fort Sentinel in the system. Must have been a glitch." But the transfer orders were real, signed by a Colonel Marcus Hale, a name she didn't recognize but that somehow felt familiar, like a word on the tip of her tongue, like the voice in her nightmares. Sarah stood, moving quietly so as not to wake her roommate, and walked to the bathroom. She splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Brown irises stared back, regulation haircut, a small scar above her left eyebrow from the accident. 23 years old according to her file, though sometimes she felt ancient. Who are you really? She thought. The question had haunted her since waking up in the hospital 2 years ago with no memory of her life before. The Army had helped her rebuild, given her purpose, trained her as a combat medic. She was good at it. Exceptional, her instructors said. She had an instinct for field medicine that seemed almost preternatural. But was it instinct, or was it something else? Something learned in a life she couldn't remember. She touched the scar on her wrist again. Then, on impulse, she ran her fingertips along the back of her neck. There, just at the base of her skull, hidden by her hairline, a small, hard bump beneath the skin. She had felt it before, assumed it was scar tissue from the accident. Now, standing in the harsh fluorescent light, she pressed harder. The bump was too regular, too perfectly placed, almost like something had been inserted there, something small, something that didn't belong. Sarah pulled away and gripped the sink. She was being paranoid. The nightmares were getting to her, making her see conspiracies where there were none. She was Sarah Mitchell, combat medic, United States Army. She had a past, even if she couldn't remember it. Foster care in Nebraska, a lonely childhood, enlistment at 18 looking for family. These were facts from her file, facts she had read so many times they felt like memories. But they weren't memories, were they? They were just words on paper. She returned to her bunk and lay down, staring at the ceiling. In 6 hours, she would board a transport to Fort Sentinel. In 6 hours, she would step into something that felt less like a new assignment and more like a trap closing around her. She should refuse the transfer, should march into her co's office and demand to stay at Hood. But even as she thought it, she knew she wouldn't. Something was pulling her to Fort Sentinel, something stronger than fear, stronger than logic. Maybe it was the voice from her nightmares. Maybe it was the handwriting in her journal that wasn't quite hers. Maybe it was the bump beneath her skull that shouldn't exist. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe she just needed to know the truth, even if the truth destroyed her. Sarah closed her vision and waited for dawn. The convoy rolled through the Texas desert under a sky bleached white by the sun. Sarah sat in the back of the transport truck, her medical bag clutched on her lap, watching the landscape blur past through the open tailgate. Sand and scrub brush and nothing else for miles. The kind of emptiness that made you feel small, insignificant, easy to lose. There were 5 other soldiers in the truck, all heading to different postings. None of them talked much. The heat was oppressive even with the wind whipping through, and conversation required energy no one wanted to spend. Sarah pulled out the file folder she'd been given at the motor pool. Fort Sentinel, established 1952 as a Cold War listening post, decommissioned in 1991, reactivated in 2019 for border security operations. Current personnel, 112. Commanding officer, Captain David Torres. She flipped through personnel photos. Torres looked tired, older than his 45 years. Deep lines etched around his gaze, the expression of a man carrying weight he couldn't share. The other faces blurred together. Young soldiers, most of them. Probably volunteers looking to bulk up their service records with a hardship posting. Or maybe they were like her. Maybe they had all received mysterious emails that disappeared when questioned. Maybe they all had nightmares about cold steel and mechanical voices. She was being paranoid again. The convoy slowed as they approached the first checkpoint. A simple barrier across the road, two guards in full kit despite the heat. One of them approached the truck, checked IDs against a roster, waved them through. Standard procedure. But as they passed, Sarah noticed the guard's stare lingering on her just a fraction too long. Recognition, or just the natural interest soldiers showed when a new face arrived at an isolated posting. The second checkpoint was more thorough. 3 guards this time, plus a K-9 unit. They searched the truck, checked IDs again, scanned everyone's retinas. The sergeant in charge, a woman with sun-weathered skin and calculating focus, studied Sarah's file for what felt like minutes. Specialist Mitchell, combat medic, Fort Sam Houston, trained. Yes, ma'am. We don't get many volunteers for Sentinel. The sergeant's tone was neutral, but her assessment was sharp. What made you request transfer? Sarah had prepared an answer. Looking for experience, ma'am. Wanted to see different operations. Experience. The sergeant handed back the file. You'll get plenty of that here. Welcome to the edge of nowhere. The third checkpoint was just a boom gate and a bored-looking private. But Sarah noticed something. Each checkpoint had been more secure than the last, with better equipment, more thorough procedures. Like peeling back layers to reach something hidden at the center. What were they protecting? Or more accurately, what were they containing? Fort Sentinel appeared on the horizon like a mirage. Low concrete buildings huddled behind chain-link fencing topped with concertina wire. Guard towers at each corner. The whole installation couldn't have been more than 30 acres. Small. Isolated. The kind of place that wouldn't make headlines if it disappeared overnight. The truck stopped at the main gate. Sarah grabbed her duffel and medical bag, climbed down into heat that hit like a physical blow. 106 degrees according to the thermometer mounted by the guardhouse. And this was March. Summer would be hell. She stood for a moment, getting her bearings, and felt it again. That same pull of recognition. She had never been to Fort Sentinel, had never even been to Texas before her transfer to Hood 6 months ago. Yet something about this place felt familiar. The layout of the buildings. The way the shadows fell in the late afternoon. The smell of dust and diesel and something else. Something chemical. Specialist Mitchell. She turned. A man in his late 20s, sergeant's stripes extended a palm. Sergeant Jake Ramos, I'm with 3rd Platoon. Captain Torres asked me to show you around. His handshake was firm, his smile genuine, but his bearing held the same weariness she'd seen in Torres' photo. Like everyone here was carrying secrets too heavy to name. Thank you, Sergeant. Jake's fine when we're off duty. Not much formality out here. He grabbed her duffel. Come on. I'll show you the infirmary first, then get you settled in quarters. They walked through the compound. Soldiers moved with purpose, but there was something off about their movements. Too controlled, too precise, like they were following invisible rails. Sarah caught glimpses of faces, some young, some older, all wearing variations of the same exhausted expression. How long have you been stationed here? She asked. 14 months, voluntarily extended twice. He said it like a confession. Most people do one tour and run. I stayed. Why? Ramos was quiet for several paces. Unfinished business. They passed a building marked Supply Depot, authorized personnel only. Through a gap in the door, Sarah glimpsed rows of equipment. Standard military issue mostly. But in the back, she saw containers marked with symbols she didn't recognize. Biohazard warnings, but modified. An extra glyph that looked almost like a number. 7. Her skull throbbed suddenly, sharp and immediate. The pain centered at the base of her head, right where that bump sat beneath her skin. She stumbled. Ramos caught her elbow. You okay? Fine, just the heat. You'll acclimate, takes a few days. But he was watching her carefully now. You get migraines. Sometimes. See Doc Brennan if they get bad. He's got good meds for it. He paused. Oh, wait. You're Doc Brennan now. Guess you'll have to prescribe yourself. The previous medic left. 6 months ago, sudden transfer. We've been using a physician assistant out of El Paso since then, but he only comes weekly. Ramos's jaw tightened. Brennan was good. Shame he left so quick. Did he say why? Nope, just packed up one night and was gone by morning, didn't even wait for relief. Ramos's tone was casual, but Sarah heard the undercurrent. Fear, suspicion. Here we are, your new kingdom. The infirmary was a converted Quonset hut, bigger than Sarah expected. Exam tables, medical storage, a small surgery area, even a 2-bed recovery ward. Well-equipped for such a small base. Almost too well-equipped. I'll let you get oriented, Ramos said. Captain Torres wants to see you at 1800. His office is in the admin building, east side. Can't miss it. Thank you, Jake. He nodded and left. Sarah stood in the empty infirmary, listening to the hum of the air conditioning, and tried to shake the feeling that she'd been here before. She walked slowly through the space, running her fingertips over equipment. Cardiac monitor, ultrasound machine, surgical tray, all familiar from her training. But then she opened a supply cabinet and froze. The medications were organized wrong. Not according to any system she'd been taught, and definitely not alphabetically or by category. But she knew exactly where everything was. Her fingers moved without conscious thought, reaching for the second shelf, fourth bottle from the left, and pulled out morphine. How had she known? She checked another cabinet. IV supplies, third drawer back left corner, sure enough 16-gauge needles. Sarah backed away, pulse racing. She'd never been in this infirmary before, never spoken to Doc Brennan, never received any kind of briefing on the layout. Yet she knew it, intimately. She pulled out her phone to make a note, then stopped. The infirmary had security cameras in all 4 corners, standard for medication security. But were they standard, or were they watching for something specific? Instead, she walked to the small office attached to the main room. Doc Brennan's office, presumably. The desk was clean, empty except for a computer and a small photo frame face down on the surface. Sarah picked it up. The photo showed a man in his 50s, gray hair, kind features, standing next to a woman and 2 teenage girls, all smiling, all looking like a family that had no idea what was coming. Sarah turned the frame over. Taped to the back was a small key. She peeled it off, examined it. Not a building key, too small, a locker key maybe, or a file cabinet. She looked around the office. Standard issue desk with 3 drawers. She tried them. All unlocked, all empty. A bookshelf with medical references. A filing cabinet marked medical records, authorized personnel only. The key fit the filing cabinet. Sarah knew she should wait, should ask Torres for permission, should follow protocol. But her fingers were already turning the key, pulling open the top drawer. Patient files, organized alphabetically. She flipped through them quickly. Standard sick call stuff mostly. Respiratory infections, sprained ankles, minor injuries, all routine. Except the files were too thin. A base this size, operating for 2 years since reactivation, should have generated more paperwork. Physicals alone would create volumes, but each folder held maybe 10 pages maximum. Sarah pulled out a file at random. Private First Class Daniel Lee. She opened it. The last entry was dated 3 weeks ago. Complaint of headaches and irritability. Doc Brennan's notes were clinical and brief, but in the margin, written in tiny letters, was a single word. Run. Sarah's palms trembled. She pulled another file. Corporal James Martinez. Last entry 2 months ago. Muscle fatigue and confusion. And in the margin, the same word. Run. She went through 6 more files. All had the same marginal note, written in progressively more desperate handwriting, like Doc Brennan had been trying to warn someone but didn't dare be explicit. The 8th file made Sarah stop breathing. The tab read, SM Phase 1 complete. No full name, just initials, but inside was an X-ray, cervical spine, female patient based on bone structure, and there at the base of the skull, clear as day on the film, was a small metallic object, rectangular, approximately 5 millimeters in length. An implant. Sarah's fingers flew to the back of her own neck, the bump beneath her skin. She moved to the infirmary's X-ray machine, powered it up with shaking grip, positioned herself, took an image. The film developed slowly, too slowly. Sarah paced, her mind racing. This was insane. She was jumping to conclusions. The implant in the file could be medical, a neurostimulator for chronic pain, a shunt for cranial pressure. There were legitimate reasons. The X-ray finished processing. Sarah held it up to the light. There at the base of her skull was an identical rectangular object, same size, same position, same sharp edges that didn't belong in human tissue. She heard footsteps outside, heavy boots on concrete, coming toward the infirmary. Sarah moved fast, shoved the X-rays into her medical bag, closed the filing cabinet, locked it, returned the key to behind the photo frame. She was back in the main room pretending to check inventory when the door opened. A woman stepped inside. 30-something, Lieutenant's bars, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her scrutiny was cold and assessing, the kind that missed nothing. Specialist Mitchell, I'm Lieutenant Rachel Quinn, Communications Officer. No handshake offered. Captain Torres sent me to check on you. Just getting oriented, ma'am. Good, we run a tight ship here. Medical logs must be updated daily. All controlled substances inventoried weekly. Any communicable diseases reported immediately to the command team. Quinn's focus swept the room. I see you found Doc Brennan's filing system. It wasn't a question. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Yes, ma'am, very organized. He was thorough. Quinn stepped closer. Too thorough sometimes, asked a lot of questions, made people uncomfortable. Is that why he left? He left because he couldn't handle the isolation. Not everyone is cut out for Sentinel. Quinn's attention locked on Sarah's. Are you cut out for it, specialist? Yes, ma'am. We'll see. Quinn turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing, we have a saying here. Trust your training, not your instincts. Instincts can mislead you in the desert, make you see things that aren't there. You understand? Yes, ma'am. Good, Captain Torres will see you at 1800. Don't be late. The door closed. Sarah waited 30 seconds, listening to Quinn's footsteps fade, then exhaled shakily. That hadn't been a friendly introduction. That had been a warning. Or a test. She pulled out her phone, took photos of several patient files, the X-ray, the office. She wanted to email them to someone, but who? Her old co at Hood, Dr. Reeves. Neither would believe her. She had no proof of anything except her own paranoia and a piece of metal in her neck that could have a dozen innocent explanations. Instead, she composed a message to herself, scheduled to send in 72 hours. If she canceled it before then, fine. If not, at least there would be a record. If you're reading this, something happened to me at Fort Sentinel. Check patient files. Check medical records. Everyone here has the same symptoms. And Doc Brennan tried to warn someone before he disappeared. She hit schedule and pocketed the phone. 1800 hours. 2 hours from now. Enough time to find quarters, shower, change into a clean uniform. Enough time to look like a soldier reporting for duty and not someone whose world was cracking apart. Sarah grabbed her bags and left the infirmary. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the compound. Soldiers were heading to the mess hall for dinner. Normal. Everything looked so desperately normal. But as she walked toward the barracks, she noticed things. Small things. The way soldiers moved in groups, never alone. The way they glanced at the buildings on the west side of the compound, the ones marked restricted, authorized personnel only. The way their conversations died when she passed, resuming only after she was several steps away. Fort Sentinel had secrets, dark ones. Doc Brennan had discovered them and run, or tried to run. Sarah touched the back of her neck again. The implant was real. The X-rays proved it, but what was it for? Tracking, medical monitoring. Or was it something else? Something that explained the nightmares, the handwriting changes, the gaps in her memory. She thought of the voice from her dreams. Subject 7, state your mission, eliminate, retrieve, return. And suddenly Sarah understood with terrible clarity why she had volunteered for Fort Sentinel. Not because she wanted to, not even because something was pulling her here, but because she had been programmed to. The question wasn't why she had come. The question was what she was supposed to do now that she'd arrived. Captain David Torres had the look of a man who had seen too much and slept too little. He stood when Sarah entered his office, offered a palm across a desk covered in reports and coffee stains. His grip was firm, but his hand was clammy, nervous. Specialist Mitchell, welcome to Sentinel. Thank you, sir. Sit, please. He gestured to a metal folding chair. The office was Spartan. No personal photos. No decorations except a faded map of the Texas-Mexico border pinned to the wall. I've reviewed your file. Top marks at Fort Sam Houston. Exemplary performance at Hood. We're lucky to have you. I appreciate that, sir. Torres leaned back in his chair, studying her. The silence stretched. Sarah waited, using the time to study him in return. Late 40s. Wedding ring on his left hand, but a pale band of skin beneath it like he'd only recently started wearing it again. Stress lines around his mouth. A slight tremor in his right hand when he reached for his coffee mug. Can I ask you something, Mitchell? His tone was casual, but his focus was sharp. Why did you volunteer for this posting? Sarah had prepared for this question. I wanted field experience, sir. Challenging environment. Opportunity to serve. Bullshit. She blinked. Torres leaned forward. Nobody volunteers for Sentinel looking for opportunity. This is where the Army sends people it wants to forget about, or people who want to be forgotten. So I'll ask again. Why are you really here? Sarah met his stare. I don't know, sir. It was the truth, and something in Torres' expression shifted. Recognition, maybe even relief. That's the most honest answer I've gotten in 2 years. He opened a drawer, pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. You drink? Off duty, sir. He poured 2 fingers into each glass, slid one across the desk. We're off duty. And before you ask, no, I don't make a habit of drinking with subordinates, but you're going to need this. Sarah took the glass but didn't drink. Sir. Torres swirled his whiskey, watching the amber liquid catch the light. How much do you remember about your life before the Army? The question hit like a punch. Sarah's grip tightened on the glass. Sir, I'm not sure what you mean. Your file says you enlisted at 18, but it's thin on details before that. Foster care in Nebraska, no family, no records before age 16. He looked up. Does that seem normal to you? I had a difficult childhood. Records get lost sometimes. Records, right. Tors downed his whiskey in one swallow. You ever wonder if your records might be more than just lost, if they might have been deliberately erased? Sarah's heart was pounding now. Why would you say that, sir? Because I asked the same question about myself 6 months ago, and I didn't like the answers I found. He refilled his glass with a shaking hand. You've been to the infirmary, found Doc Brennan's files, I'm guessing. No point in lying. Yes, sir. Did you find yours? There was a file, just initials, SM. Sarah Mitchell, or maybe Sarah isn't even your real name. Tors pulled a folder from his desk drawer, slid it across. This arrived for you yesterday, before you did. That struck me as odd, so I opened it. Sarah picked up the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, orders, but not transfer orders. Activation protocol was printed at the top. Below that, a series of codes and numbers she didn't recognize, and at the bottom, a single line. Subject 7 standby for Phase 2 initiation. The room tilted. Sarah gripped the desk. I don't understand. Neither did I at first. Tor's voice was hollow. But then I started putting pieces together. Doc Brennan's notes, medical records that disappeared, soldiers showing symptoms of something that shouldn't exist. And the thing is, Mitchell, I think I'm one of them too. One of what? Sleepers, agents, whatever the hell they made us into. He touched the back of his own neck. You've felt it, haven't you? The implant, you've seen it on X-ray. Sarah's vision blurred. This couldn't be real. It was her paranoia, her nightmares, her fractured memory playing tricks. Sir, this sounds like conspiracy theory nonsense. I know, but here's what I do know. Tors pulled out another file, this one thick with documentation. Fort Sentinel was reactivated 2 years ago under classified orders. Since then, 112 soldiers have been stationed here. 93 of them volunteered. When I checked their backgrounds, every single one had the same thing in common. Memory gaps, thin files, no verifiable history before a certain point. That's not possible. It shouldn't be, but it is. He opened the file, showed her pages of medical reports. Doc Brennan noticed the pattern. He started testing soldiers without their knowledge. Blood work showed anomalies. Brain scans revealed implants. When he tried to report it, his communications were blocked. So he started documenting everything, planning to smuggle the evidence out. What happened to him? I don't know. He came to me 3 days before he disappeared, told me he'd discovered the truth about Sentinel, that we weren't a border security outpost. We were a containment facility for people like us. Tor's palms were shaking badly now. People who had been programmed for something. He said Phase 1 was integration, making us believe we were normal soldiers. Phase 2 was activation, turning us into whatever we were designed to be. Sarah thought of her journal, the handwriting that changed, the tactical information she had no reason to know. Eliminate, retrieve, return. What did you say? Tor's gaze widened. Nothing, just something from a dream. What kind of dream? Sarah described the nightmare, the steel table, the voice, the mission parameters. Tor's face went pale. I've had the same dream, so did Brennan, so have at least 6 other soldiers I've spoken to quietly. He stood, moved to the window. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of blood. There's something else. 3 days ago, I received a coded transmission. It wasn't on any official channel, just a brief message. Phase 2 begins at 0300 March 10th. That's tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, Sarah's palms went numb. What happens then? I think that's when the activation signal goes out. Whatever we were programmed to do, we'll do it, without choice, without even knowing we're doing it. Tors turned back to her, and his stare was desperate. Brennan left something for me before he disappeared, a key. He said if anything happened to him, I should use it, but he didn't say what it opened. "Where's the key?" "That's the thing," he said. "I'd already have it. That it was somewhere I'd looked 100 times but never really seen." Tors laughed bitterly. "I've torn this office apart, found nothing." Sarah thought of the key behind the photo frame in Brennan's office. Somewhere Tors had probably looked but never touched. "Sir, I think I might know where it is." Before she could continue, the lights went out. Not just in the office. Through the window, Sarah saw the entire compound go dark. Emergency lighting kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in red. And then came the sound. An alarm, not the standard base alarm, something else. A tone that seemed to vibrate through Sarah's bones, resonating at a frequency that made her teeth ache. And her skull exploded with pain. She doubled over, clutching her head. The implant was burning, white-hot, sending signals that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to something deeper, something that had been sleeping inside her. Through the agony, she heard Tors screaming, heard boots pounding in the hallway outside, heard her own voice, flat and mechanical, saying words she didn't choose. Activation received. Phase 2 initiated, standing by for orders. No, this wasn't her. This was the program. The thing they had put inside her. She was Sarah Mitchell. She was a medic. She was a person, not a weapon. But the pain was overwhelming, dragging her down into darkness. And the last thing she saw before consciousness fled was Tors on the floor, convulsing, his gaze rolled back in his head. And beyond him, through the window, other soldiers stumbling into the red-lit compound, moving in perfect synchronization, heading toward the restricted buildings on the west side. The ones marked, authorized personnel only. The one Sarah suddenly knew she had been programmed to protect. Or destroy. She tried to fight it, tried to hold on to herself, but the implant was stronger. It had been waiting for this moment. Waiting for 2 years while she lived a fake life with fake memories, believing she was someone she had never been. The darkness took her. And when she woke, she wouldn't be Sarah Mitchell anymore. She would be Subject 7. And Subject 7 had a mission to complete. Consciousness returned in fragments. Pain first, sharp and immediate, centered at the base of her skull like someone had driven a nail through bone. Then sound. Alarms wailing in the distance overlaid with something else. Screaming, boots on concrete, the unmistakable crack of gunfire. Sarah Mitchell opened her vision to chaos. She was on the floor of Captain Tors' office, face pressed against cold linoleum. The emergency lighting painted everything in shades of crimson. Her palms were trembling, fingers splayed wide like she tried to claw her way through the floor itself. And her mouth tasted of copper, blood. She'd bitten her tongue when the implant had activated. How long had she been out? Minutes, hours. Sarah pushed herself to her knees, fighting waves of nausea. The office was empty. Tors was gone. His chair lay overturned, papers scattered across the desk. Through the window, she could see soldiers moving across the compound. Not running, walking with mechanical precision, like chess pieces guided by an invisible hand. All heading toward the restricted section on the west side. She tried to stand and her legs buckled. The implant was still active, sending pulses through her nervous system. Not pain exactly, more like pressure, like something trying to push her consciousness aside and take control of her body. A voice echoed in her skull, not heard but felt. Cold, commanding, familiar from 1,000 nightmares. Subject 7. Proceed to Bunker 12. Authorization code Sentinel 779er. You have 30 minutes to complete Phase 2 Alpha. Sarah grabbed the edge of the desk, hauling herself upright. Her reflection stared back from the darkened window. Same face, same features, But something was different. Her pupils were dilated, almost consuming the brown iris, and her expression was blank, emotionless, the face of someone who would follow orders without question. No. She slammed her fist into the wall, welcoming the sharp burst of pain. Physical sensation. Proof she still controlled this body. The voice in her skull intensified, pressure building like a vice around her thoughts. Subject 7. Noncompliance detected, administering corrective stimulus. The implant fired and Sarah's world became agony. Every nerve ending ignited simultaneously. She collapsed, muscles seizing, unable to scream because her jaw had locked shut. This was what happened when you fought the program. This was the cost of resistance. Through the haze of pain, she heard footsteps in the hallway, multiple people, moving fast. She tried to crawl toward the door, to lock it, to do anything, but her body wouldn't respond. The door burst open. Sergeant Jake Ramos stumbled inside, his face streaked with blood from a cut above his eyebrow. Behind him came a younger woman in her early 20s, her uniform marked with tech specialist insignia. Private Maya Chen, Sarah's memory supplied. Radio operator, skilled hacker. Both of them looked terrified. Jesus Christ. Ramos dropped to his knees beside Sarah. Mitchell, can you hear me? She managed a nod. The pain was receding now, leaving her gasping. We need to move, Chen said, her voice tight with fear. She moved to the window, peering out through the blinds. There are at least 20 of them converging on the bunkers, moving like robots, and Quinn is coordinating them. Lieutenant Rachel Quinn, communications officer, the woman who had warned Sarah about asking too many questions. Ramos helped Sarah sit up against the wall. What happened to you? 1 second the alarms went off, next thing Torres is screaming and you're on the floor. The implant, Sarah's voice came out ragged. They activated it, tried to take control. Tried, Ramos's stare widened. You mean you fought it off? Not exactly. Sarah touched the back of her neck. The skin was hot, almost burning. It's still there, still trying, but I can feel it now. Feel the difference between my thoughts and its commands. Chen knelt beside them, pulling out a tablet. I've been monitoring the base network. 3 minutes ago, every soldier with an implant received the same activation signal. Encrypted, high frequency. I couldn't block it, but I recorded it. She turned the screen toward Sarah. You're the only one who didn't respond. Everyone else just started walking toward the restricted zone like sleepwalkers. Sarah's stomach turned. How many? 93 active signals, plus the ones in the bunkers who were already there. Chen's fingers flew across the tablet. Mitchell, what the hell is going on? What are those implants? Control devices. Sarah forced herself to focus through the lingering pain. We're not soldiers, we're weapons, programmed and activated when needed. Ramos stood abruptly, moving to Tor's desk. He rifled through the drawers, found what he was looking for, a sidearm. He checked the magazine chambered around. Then we destroy the source, find whoever is sending the signal and shut it down. It's not that simple. Sarah pulled herself to her feet, using the wall for support. The implants are already active. Shutting down the signal won't deprogram people. We need to find out what Phase 2 actually is, what they're making everyone do. And how do we do that? Chen asked. Sarah thought of Doc Brennan's files, the marginal notes, the warning to run, and the key Torres had mentioned. The one Brennan said would be somewhere obvious but overlooked. We go to the infirmary. There's something there we need. They moved through the compound like ghosts, keeping to shadows, avoiding the pools of red emergency light. The activated soldiers were easy to spot. They walked in perfect formation, stare fixed straight ahead, oblivious to everything except their programmed destination. Sarah counted at least 30 between Tor's office and the medical building. Some of them she recognized from the mess hall, from passing encounters in the hallways. Young faces, dedicated soldiers who had volunteered for this posting thinking they were serving their country. Now they were puppets. Ramos pulled them into an alcove as a group of 6 marched past. One of them was bleeding from a head wound, the blood streaming down his face unnoticed. He didn't blink, didn't slow, just kept walking with the same mechanical precision as the others. This is wrong. Ramos's knuckles were white on his pistol grip. These are good people. They don't deserve this. None of us deserved this. Sarah watched the group disappear around a corner, but someone decided we were expendable, tools to be used and discarded. They reached the infirmary without incident. Sarah led them inside, locking the door behind them. The space felt different now. What had seemed like a well-equipped medical facility, this afternoon now felt like a crime scene. Every piece of equipment potentially part of the conspiracy. Chen immediately moved to the computer, connecting her tablet. I'll try to access the base network, maybe find out what's in those bunkers. Sarah went to Doc Brennan's office, Ramos closed behind. The photo frame was still on the desk, face down where she'd left it. She picked it up, studied the image of Brennan and his family. A man who had discovered the truth and tried to warn people. A man who had disappeared without a trace. She turned the frame over. The key was gone. Looking for this. Sarah spun. Tor stood in the doorway, the small key held between his fingers. But something was wrong. His gaze was vacant, pupils blown wide, and he moved with the same jerky precision as the other activated soldiers. Ramos raised his pistol. Captain, I need you to stop right there. Tor's head tilted at an unnatural angle. When he spoke, his voice was flat, robotic. Subject 7 has been designated non-compliant. Termination authorized. All assets to converge on medical facility. Tor's fight it. Sarah stepped forward, palms raised. I know you're in there. You told me about this, about the programming. You can resist it. Resistance is irrelevant. The mission is absolute. Tor's fingers moved to his sidearm with mechanical efficiency. Ramos fired first. The shot took Tor's in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled but didn't fall, didn't cry out, just turned back toward them, drawing his weapon with his offhand. Sarah moved on instinct, years of combat medic training overriding fear. She grabbed a sedative syringe from the supply cabinet, uncapped it, and lunged forward. Tor's fired, but the shot went wide. Sarah drove the needle into his neck, depressing the plunger, injecting enough sedative to drop a man twice his size. Tor's gaze widened. For just a moment clarity returned. "Run," he whispered. Then his knees buckled and he collapsed. "We need to go." Chen appeared in the doorway, tablet clutched to her chest. "I accessed the security feeds. There are at least 40 activated soldiers converging on this building, 2 minutes out." "Did you find anything about the bunkers?" Sarah asked. "Better, I found the source code for the activation protocol. And Mitchell, it's not just controlling them, it's rewriting them." Chen's voice shook. "The implants are connected to memory centers. They can suppress personality, overlay new directives. These people won't just follow orders. They'll believe the orders are their own thoughts." Sarah looked down at Tor's, unconscious on the floor. "How long does it take, the rewriting?" "According to this, full integration happens in stages. Phase 2 Alpha is just activation. Phase 2 Bravo is reprogramming. That starts in 90 minutes. Chen checked her tablet. "After that, they won't be soldiers anymore. They'll be slaves." 90 minutes. Sarah's mind raced. They needed to stop the signal, needed to find whoever was controlling this, needed to free the others before it was too late. But first, they needed to survive the next 2 minutes. "The tunnel," Ramos said suddenly. "There's a maintenance tunnel that runs under the compound, built during the Cold War. Tors showed it to me when I first arrived, said it was for emergency evacuation." "Where's the entrance?" Sarah asked. "Supply building, southeast corner. There's a hatch hidden under the floor panels." They ran. Sarah grabbed her medical bag and what supplies she could carry. Chen stuffed her tablet into a backpack along with hard drives she pulled from the infirmary computer. Ramos took point, pistol ready, leading them through the back door into the night. The desert air was cool after the air-conditioned buildings, carrying the scent of dust and creosote. Sarah could hear the activated soldiers approaching from multiple directions, boots in perfect rhythm, a sound that would haunt her nightmares if she survived long enough to have them. They reached the supply building as the first group rounded the corner behind them. Ramos fired 3 shots, not trying to hit anyone, just buying time. The activated soldiers didn't flinch, didn't take cover, just kept advancing with inexorable mechanical precision. Inside the supply building, Ramos led them to the back corner. He kicked aside boxes of equipment, revealing floor panels underneath. Together they pulled up the panels, exposing a metal hatch sealed with a rusted lock. "Stand back." Ramos aimed at the lock and fired. The bullet ricocheted off metal, but the lock held. He fired again. Same result. "Move." Chen pulled a small device from her pack, some kind of electronic lock pick. She attached it to the mechanism and it began cycling through combinations. Behind them, the supply building door burst open. Soldiers poured inside, weapons raised but not firing. They didn't need to kill. They just needed to capture. Bring Sarah back for reprogramming. Turn her into Subject 7 permanently. The lock clicked open. Ramos hauled the hatch up, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. "Go, now." Chen went first, disappearing into the hole. Sarah followed, her grip slipping on the ladder rungs. Below, her boots hit concrete. The smell of stale air and mildew filled her nostrils. Ramos came down last, pulling the hatch shut above him just as fingers grabbed for it. The metal clanged shut and Sarah heard the lock mechanism engage. It wouldn't hold them long, but it didn't need to. Ramos clicked on a flashlight. The beam revealed a narrow tunnel stretching in both directions, concrete walls weeping moisture, pipes running along the ceiling. The air was thick and hard to breathe. "Which way?" Chen asked. "North leads to the communications building. South leads outside the fence." Ramos looked at Sarah. "Your call." Sarah thought about the 90 minutes they had before Phase 2 Bravo started. Thought about 93 soldiers being rewritten, their personalities erased, replaced with something designed to follow orders without question. Thought about Doc Brennan's warning to run. Running would be smart. Escape the fence, get to civilization, call for help from people who might actually believe them. But help would take time, hours, maybe days, and 90 minutes wasn't enough. "North," Sarah said. "If we can shut down the signal from the communications building, maybe we can stop Phase 2 Bravo before it starts." "Or we could die trying," Ramos said. But he was already moving north, flashlight cutting through the darkness. They ran through the tunnel, footsteps echoing off concrete. Behind them came the sound of metal screeching. The activated soldiers had found tools, were cutting through the hatch. Mindless determination overcoming obstacles through sheer persistence. The tunnel branched multiple times. Ramos chose each turn without hesitation, clearly familiar with the layout. They passed under buildings Sarah recognized from above. The mess hall, the barracks, the command center where this nightmare had started just an hour ago. Had it only been an hour, it felt like a lifetime. Chen stumbled and Sarah caught her elbow. The younger woman's face was pale, her breathing ragged, not from exertion, from fear. "I need to tell you something," Chen gasped. "Before we get to communications, about why I'm here, why I volunteered for Sentinel." "Save it for when we're safe," Sarah said. "There might not be a safe." Chen stopped, forcing Sarah to stop with her. "My sister was Delta Force, combat medic. 3 years ago she went on a classified mission. 6 weeks later the Army told my family she was killed in action, training accident, but they wouldn't give us details, wouldn't show us a body, just sent a flag and a medal." Sarah's chest tightened. She knew where this was going. "I didn't believe them," Chen continued. "So I joined up, worked my way into signals intelligence, started digging through classified files, found references to something called medic protocol, memory erasure and deep integration conditioning, a program to create sleeper agents from captured enemy operators or soldiers with compromised identities." "Chen." "I found a list of subjects, 12 names. My sister was number 4. Subject 4, Chen Lily." Chen's gaze was wet. "She's not dead, is she? She's like you, like all of them. Programmed and activated and used as a weapon." Sarah pulled Chen close, held her while the younger woman shook with silent sobs. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. "I'm so sorry." Ramos cleared his throat. "We need to keep moving. But Chen, when this is over, we'll find your sister. I promise you that." They moved deeper into the tunnel network, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. The activated soldiers were thorough but slow, searching methodically rather than racing ahead. The programming made them efficient but robotic. They had lost the one thing that made soldiers effective in chaotic situations: initiative. The tunnel ended at another ladder. Ramos climbed first, checked above, waved them up. They emerged in a storage room filled with old electronics and broken furniture. Through a window, Sarah could see the communications building 50 yards away. A squat concrete structure with a massive satellite dish on the roof and enough antennas to contact half the Western Hemisphere. And surrounding it were at least 30 activated soldiers, standing in concentric circles, waiting. "Shit," Ramos breathed. "They knew we'd come here." "Not they," Chen said, pointing at one of the soldiers. "She." Lieutenant Rachel Quinn stood at the center of the formation, tablet in hand, focus scanning the compound with mechanical precision. But unlike the other activated soldiers, she moved with purpose, with intelligence, giving orders the others followed instantly. "She's different," Sarah said, "more aware, like the programming enhanced her instead of erasing her." Chen studied Quinn through the window. Handler. The notes on medic protocol mentioned handlers, agents who underwent a different type of conditioning. They retain full cognitive function, but their loyalty is absolute. They manage the sleeper agents, keep them in line, ensure mission completion. "So she's been in control this whole time," Ramos said, "watching us, waiting for activation." Sarah thought back to their encounter in the infirmary, the cold assessment in Quinn's stare, the warning about asking questions. Every interaction had been a test. Quinn had been measuring her, determining if she was compliant or if she needed additional conditioning. And Sarah had failed that test by resisting activation. "We can't get past 30 soldiers," Sarah said. "Even if we had the firepower, we don't have time." "Then we need a different approach." Chen pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "I can hack into the base network from here, maybe trigger a diversion." "What kind of diversion?" Chen's smile was grim. "The activated soldiers are following Quinn's commands, right? Commands transmitted through the base communication system. What if I interrupt that signal, broadcast our own commands?" Ramos frowned. They won't follow us, we're not handlers. They don't need to follow us. They just need to be confused. Conflicting orders will slow their response time, create chaos. Chen was already working, her tablet connected to a jury-rigged antenna made from stripped wire. I can probably maintain the interference for 3 minutes before Quinn locks me out. That's your window. 3 minutes to get inside the communications building, find the source of the activation signal and shut it down. Sarah looked at Ramos. Can we do that? No, Ramos checked his pistol. 6 rounds left. But we're going to try anyway. Chen's fingers paused over the tablet. There's something else. According to the medic protocol files, the activation signal doesn't originate from Fort Sentinel. It's being relayed through our communications array from somewhere else, somewhere with much higher clearance. Where? Sarah asked. The transmission headers are encrypted, but I managed to pull partial data. The source is CONUS, Continental U.S., military installation, high-level command authority. Chen looked up, her face pale. Whoever is running this program, it's not some rogue element. It's coming from the top. The implications crashed over Sarah like a wave. This wasn't a local conspiracy. This was systemic, sanctioned. Medic protocol existed because someone in the chain of command had authorized it. Someone with enough power to create sleeper agents, to experiment on American soldiers, to treat human beings as programmable weapons. And if they tried to expose it, that same someone would have the authority to bury them, to label them as traitors or terrorists or mentally unstable, to make them disappear the same way Doc Brennan had disappeared. Then we don't expose it, Sarah said quietly. Not yet. First we survive, we free the others, we document everything, and then we find someone we can trust with the truth. Who do you trust when the enemy is your own command structure? Ramos asked. Sarah thought of Torres, unconscious on the infirmary floor. A good officer who had tried to do the right thing and been activated for his trouble. Thought of the 93 soldiers outside, their minds being slowly overwritten. We trust each other, she said, and we trust that somewhere in this system there are still people who believe in doing what's right instead of following orders. Chen nodded. I'll start the interference in 60 seconds. Once it begins, you need to move fast. I'll keep transmitting conflicting commands for as long as I can. Sarah and Ramos moved to the door, weapons ready. Through the window, they could see Quinn still coordinating the activated soldiers, arranging them in defensive positions around the communications building, setting up kill zones and overlapping fields of fire. She was good, tactical, efficient, everything a handler should be. Which meant she was also predictable. There, Sarah pointed to a gap in the formation. A blind spot where 2 groups of soldiers created a narrow corridor. If we move fast and stay low, we can get through before they react. And if they do react, Ramos asked. Then we improvise. Chen's countdown hit 0. Immediately the activated soldiers froze. Confusion rippled through the formation as conflicting commands hit their implants simultaneously. Turn left. Turn right, advance, retreat, hold position, withdraw. Their programming couldn't reconcile the contradictions, leaving them locked in decision paralysis. Quinn's head snapped up, tablet screen flashing with warnings. She began typing frantically, trying to override the interference. Sarah and Ramos ran. They crossed the open ground in seconds, keeping low, using shadows and debris for cover. The activated soldiers stood frozen, trembling with the effort of processing impossible orders. A few turned toward the running figures, but their movements were sluggish, uncertain. Sarah reached the communications building first, testing the door. Locked. Ramos fired at the handle, the shot deafening in the night. The lock shattered and they were inside. The interior was a maze of equipment racks and cable runs. Monitors displayed data streams Sarah couldn't decipher. Radio equipment lined the walls, everything from standard military frequencies to satellite uplinks. And at the center of it all, a large server array pulsing with activity. "That's it," Ramos said. "The relay point for the activation signal." Sarah approached the servers carefully. Each one was labeled with alphanumeric codes. She pulled out her phone, took photos of everything, documentation, proof, evidence that might matter if they survived. Then she heard Quinn's voice over the building's PA system. "Specialist Mitchell, Sergeant Ramos, I know you're in there. You have 60 seconds to surrender before I override Private Chen's interference and order the activated soldiers to breach the building. They will use lethal force." Sarah looked at Ramos. 60 seconds. Not enough time to shut down the servers properly. Not enough time to trace the source signal. Not enough time to free the others. Unless they did something Quinn wouldn't expect. "Cover me," Sarah said. She pulled out her medical bag, found what she was looking for. A scalpel, small, sterile, sharp enough to cut through skin and muscle with minimal damage. "What are you doing?" Ramos asked. "Getting answers." Sarah moved to a supply locker, found a first aid kit, laid out gauze, antiseptic, bandages. Then she sat down, back against the wall, and reached behind her neck. Found the implant by touch, a small hard mass beneath her skin. "Mitchell, don't. They can track me through this thing, control me. I need it out." Sarah positioned the scalpel against her neck, grip steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "I need you to help me. You could bleed out, hit a major vessel, sever a nerve. Or I could live and keep my mind my own." Sarah met his stare. "Your choice, help me or watch." Ramos was quiet for 3 seconds. Then he moved beside her, pulled on gloves from the first aid kit. "Tell me where to cut." Sarah guided his palm, feeling for the implant. There, 2 centimeters deep, horizontal incision, fast and clean. The scalpel bit into her flesh and Sarah's world went white. Pain exploded through her skull, the implant fighting back, flooding her nervous system with agony. She bit down on a piece of rubber tubing to keep from screaming. Ramos worked quickly, precisely, making the incision, spreading tissue, finding the implant with forceps. It was smaller than she'd imagined, a metal rectangle no bigger than a grain of rice, connected to her spinal column with hair-thin filaments. "It's wired into you," Ramos said. "I pull this out, I don't know what happens." Through the pain, Sarah managed to speak. "Do it." He pulled. The world shattered. Sarah felt the implant tear free, taking pieces of her nervous system with it. Felt the programming try to reassert control one final time, sending desperate signals through channels that no longer existed. Felt something fundamental break inside her skull. And then felt nothing at all. Silence, beautiful, absolute silence. The voice that had been whispering orders in her head for 2 years was gone. The pressure trying to force her into compliance was gone. The ghost of Subject 7 that had haunted her every thought was gone. She was free. Ramos pressed gauze to the wound, his grip shaking. "You're bleeding bad. We need to get you to proper medical care." "No time." Sarah's voice was weak but determined. She held up the implant, bloody and inert. "Chen needs to analyze this, find out how they work, how to disable them without surgery." "Assuming we live long enough." Ramos helped her to her feet. "Quinn's deadline just expired." As if summoned by her name, Quinn's voice came over the PA again. But this time it was different. Angry, almost human. "You removed your implant. Interesting. Painful too, I imagine, but ultimately futile. You're still trapped in this building with 93 activated soldiers surrounding you. And even if you escape, even if you run, where will you go? Medic protocol has reach everywhere. We'll find you. We always find the defective ones. Sarah stumbled to the server array, blood soaking through the bandage on her neck. She needed to think, needed to find an advantage, but her head was spinning from blood loss and shock. Then she saw it, a label on one of the servers, Medical Archive Subject Database. She pulled open the panel, found hard drives inside, pulled them free and stuffed them into her medical bag. "What are you doing?" Ramos asked. "Insurance. These drives probably contain records of every medic protocol subject, names, histories, the truth about who they really were before conditioning." Sarah zipped the bag shut. "If we make it out, these could be the evidence we need." Big if. Through the window, Sarah could see the activated soldiers recovering from Chen's interference, moving again, forming up in assault teams. Quinn had overridden the conflicting commands and reasserted control. They had maybe 2 minutes before the building was breached. "The tunnel," Sarah said. "Can we get back to it from here?" Ramos shook his head. "Not without going through them, and you're in no condition to run." "Then we don't run. We make them come to us, create a choke point." Sarah's combat medic training was kicking in, overlaid with something else. Tactical knowledge she shouldn't have, skills that felt both foreign and intimately familiar. "The entry is there," she pointed. "One door, narrow corridor beyond it, if we can hold that corridor." "We can't hold against 93 soldiers." Ramos was checking his pistol, still 6 rounds. "Even if they come at us single file." Sarah looked around the communications building. Radio equipment, power supplies, cables thick as her wrist carrying enough voltage to fry a person instantly. And suddenly she had an idea. A terrible, desperate, beautiful idea. "We don't need to hold them," she said. "We just need to give Chen enough time to do something they won't expect." "Which is?" "Tell the truth." Sarah pulled out her phone, called Chen. The younger woman answered immediately. "Mitchell, thank God, I saw them forming up. You need to get out of there." "No time. Listen carefully. I need you to do exactly what I say. Can you access the base-wide PA system?" "Yes, but Quinn will just override it." "Not if you do it from inside the server room. Physical access trumps remote control." Sarah looked at Ramos. "We're about to give you an opening. When the soldiers pull back, you run to the communications building. Use the equipment here to broadcast everything. Medic protocol, the subject database, the files you pulled from the infirmary, everything." "Broadcast to who?" "The base is in lockdown. No external communications allowed without authorization." "Then broadcast internally. Let every activated soldier hear the truth. Let them know what was done to them, what they really are." Sarah's voice was fierce despite the weakness spreading through her limbs. "Information is a weapon. We're going to weaponize the truth." "That's insane." "So is everything else tonight. Will you do it?" Chen was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. "Yeah, I'll do it." "Good, stand by." Sarah ended the call and turned to Ramos. "I need you to help me with something. It's going to be dangerous and probably violate about 30 safety regulations." Ramos smiled grimly. "At this point, what's a few more crimes?" They worked quickly. Sarah directed while Ramos executed. They pulled power cables from the server racks, stripped the insulation, exposed bare wire, ran the cables to the door to the corridor beyond, creating a web of electrified metal. Then they connected everything to the main power supply for the building. 440 volts, enough to kill instantly if someone touched it, enough to incapacitate if they got close. "This is going to hurt us too," Ramos said. "The floor's concrete, good conductor when wet." "Then we make sure we're not on the floor." Sarah climbed onto a plastic equipment case, helping Ramos up beside her. They crouched there, weapons ready, waiting. The activated soldiers hit the door 30 seconds later. The first one through grabbed the door handle and immediately convulsed as electricity surged through his body. He collapsed, smoking, and the next soldier stepped over him without hesitation, stepped directly onto the exposed cables Sarah had laid in the corridor. The current threw him backward into the soldiers behind him. 4 of them went down in a tangle of limbs and burning flesh. The smell of scorched hair and skin filled the air. But they kept coming, mindless, relentless, walking over the bodies of the fallen, accepting casualties without fear or hesitation. This was what the programming made them, what it turned soldiers into. Disposable assets. Sarah and Ramos fired from their perch, aiming for legs, trying to disable rather than kill. But there were too many. For every one that fell, 2 more took its place. The doorway became a bottleneck of bodies, activated soldiers piling up as the electricity and gunfire took their toll. Ramos's pistol clicked empty. He threw it aside, grabbed a piece of metal pipe, wielded it like a club. Sarah's medical bag yielded another weapon, a fire extinguisher. She discharged it into the mass of soldiers, the cloud of chemical suppressant buying them seconds. But seconds weren't enough. A soldier got through the kill zone, flesh blackened but still moving, grabbed Sarah's ankle, pulled hard. She fell from the equipment case, landing badly, her injured neck striking the concrete. Blood bloomed fresh through the bandage. The world spun. Through the haze, she saw Ramos leap down, the pipe in his grip rising and falling. Saw activated soldiers pouring through the door now that the electrical trap had been shorted out by all the bodies. Saw Quinn walking calmly through the carnage, tablet in hand, her expression serene. "Enough," Quinn said. Her voice carried absolute authority. The activated soldiers froze instantly. "Stand down." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah lay on the floor, bleeding, vision blurring. Ramos stood over her, the pipe still raised, breathing hard. Quinn looked down at them with something approaching pity. "You fought well, better than expected. Subject 7 was always one of our most promising candidates. It's a shame you chose defection." "Chose?" Sarah's voice was a rasp. "You think any of us chose this?" "Choice is an illusion. We're all programmed by something. Biology, society, training. Medic protocol is just more efficient." Quinn crouched beside Sarah, studying the bloody bandage on her neck. "You removed your implant, impressive, painful, but ultimately pointless. We can always install another one, stronger this time, with better safeguards against resistance." "You can't reprogram all of us. People will notice. People will ask questions." "People see what they want to see. Soldiers have breakdowns. Accidents happen. Personnel are transferred to new postings and no one questions it." Quinn reached out almost gently and touched the wound on Sarah's neck. Sarah flinched. "You could have been part of something important. A new kind of soldier, completely loyal, completely controlled, the perfect weapon." "We're not weapons, we're people." "We're people, past tense. Subject 7 died the moment we implanted you. Rachel Kovacs died even before that. And whoever you were before Rachel, before the lies and the conditioning, that person is buried so deep you'll never find them." Quinn stood. "Take them both to processing, full reconditioning, and this time increase the loyalty programming." The activated soldiers moved forward. And then the lights went out again. All of them, not just emergency lighting, total blackness. Followed immediately by Maya Chen's voice over the PA system. Loud, clear, cutting through the darkness like a knife. Attention all Fort Sentinel personnel. This is Private Maya Chen, Signals Intelligence. What you're about to hear is classified information regarding medic protocol. You deserve to know the truth about what was done to you. In the darkness, Sarah heard Quinn curse, heard her shouting orders to shut down the broadcast, but Chen had physical access to the equipment. There was no shutting her down remotely. Chen's voice continued. Medic Protocol is a classified program designed to create sleeper agents from American soldiers. You were selected, kidnapped, your memories erased, and new identities implanted. The people you think you are, the lives you remember, none of it is real. You are prisoners in your own minds. Sarah felt the activated soldiers around her hesitate, felt their programming clash with the information flooding their implants. Confusion rippled through their ranks. The implants in your skulls allow remote activation and control. When activated, you follow orders without question. You become weapons, slaves, but you don't have to be. You can fight it. You can resist. Chen's voice grew stronger. My sister was Subject 4. Her name was Lily Chen. She was taken 3 years ago. I don't know if she's still alive. I don't know if any part of her is still in there. But if she can hear me, I want her to know I'm coming for her. And I want every person listening to know this. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And you are not beyond saving. The lights flickered back on. Sarah saw the activated soldiers standing frozen, their faces twisted with conflict. Programming versus information. Control versus truth. Some were trembling. Some had tears streaming down their faces. All of them looked lost. And Quinn looked terrified. "Shut it down," she screamed into her tablet. "Override, authorization Quinn 77 Alpha." But Chen wasn't done. "I'm now broadcasting files from the Medic Protocol database. Subject names, real identities, everything they tried to erase. If you hear your name, if you recognize yourself, hold on to that. Remember who you were." Names began scrolling across every screen in the communications building. Dozens of them. Sarah saw her own file flash past. Subject 7, Kovacs, Rachel, former Delta Force, captured 2021. Condition 2022, deployed as Mitchell, Sarah. Rachel Kovacs, that was her real name, her real identity before Sarah, before the implant, before everything. She tried to hold on to it, but the name felt foreign, distant, like someone else's life. Chen's voice was reading names now. Subject 1 Parks Michael, Subject 2 Stevens Jennifer, Subject 3 Rodriguez Carlos, Subject 4 Chen Lily. At her sister's name, Chen's voice broke, but she continued. Subject 5 Morrison David. One by one, the activated soldiers began to drop their weapons. Not all of them. Some fought the information, clung to their programming, remained under control, but enough broke free. Enough remembered fragments of who they'd been. Enough to create chaos. Quinn backed toward the door, her control slipping. This changes nothing. Even if they remember, they can't escape Medic Protocol. We have facilities across the country. We have resources. We have the backing of who? Ramos had moved behind her, the pipe now pressed against her spine. Say the name. Tell us who authorized this. Quinn smiled. You really think I'd give up that information? You really think you can win this? Maybe not, but we can make sure everyone knows what you did. Chen's broadcasting to the entire base network, every computer, every phone. By tomorrow morning, this information will be everywhere. You can kill us, but you can't kill the truth. Can't I? Quinn's fingers moved to a device on her belt. A dead man's switch, Sarah realized. You think I'd let myself be captured? Let Medic Protocol be exposed? I have orders for this scenario too. The device beeped once, twice. And somewhere beneath Fort Sentinel, deep in the restricted bunkers, something detonated. The explosion was massive. Sarah felt it through the concrete, a deep rumbling that grew louder by the second. The building shook. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. Ceiling tiles rained down. Quinn's smile widened. The bunkers held the real secrets, the research data, the full subject roster, the identities of everyone involved in medic protocol from day one. She laughed. It's all gone now, just ashes and rubble. You have nothing. We have the hard drives, Sarah said through gritted teeth. The ones I pulled from the servers, backed up copies of everything. Quinn's smile faltered. Impossible. Those servers require biometric access. Required past tense. You should really update your security protocols. Sarah pulled the hard drives from her medical bag, held them up. Every subject, every identity, every piece of evidence, safe in my hands. For the first time, Quinn looked uncertain. Then the building shook again, harder this time. Secondary explosions. The bunker collapse was triggering a chain reaction, destabilizing the entire compound. Time to go, Ramos said. They ran. Sarah, Ramos, and the activated soldiers who had broken free of their programming, out of the communications building, across the compound, toward the main gate. Behind them, fires erupted as the underground explosions reached fuel storage. The sky turned orange and black. Chen was waiting at the gate, tablet still in hand. She grabbed Sarah as they passed. Did it work? Did they hear? They heard. Sarah clutched the hard drives to her chest. Now we need to make sure the world hears. They burst through the gate into the desert beyond. Behind them, Fort Sentinel collapsed in on itself, smoke and flame rising into the night sky. Some of the activated soldiers followed them. Others stood frozen, unable to break free of their programming even as the base burned around them. Sarah watched them burn and felt nothing but grief. Ramos pulled them into a vehicle, some kind of supply truck that had been parked outside the fence. He hot-wired it and they drove into the darkness, leaving the inferno behind. In the distance, Sarah could see headlights, multiple vehicles coming fast. Reinforcements, Chen said quietly. Quinn must have called them before the explosion. Then we keep driving. We don't stop until we reach people who can help. Sarah looked down at the hard drives in her bloody palms. This evidence doesn't mean anything if we're dead. Ramos pushed the truck to its limits, racing through the desert. The pursuing vehicles matched their speed. There would be no escape through raw velocity. They needed to be smarter, needed an advantage. Give me your tablet, Sarah said to Chen. Why? Because I just realized something. We're not the only ones who want medic protocol exposed. Sarah pulled up the subject database on the tablet, searched for a specific file, found it. Subject 4, Chen Lily, last known deployment, Washington, D.C. Cover identity, FBI Special Agent Laura Winters. Chen gasped, my sister is FBI. Was, before they took her, before they turned her into Subject 4. Sarah pulled up more details. Contact information, emergency protocols. If she's still undercover, she has resources, people she works with, people who trust her. But she's activated. She's one of them now. Maybe, or maybe she's like me. Maybe she fought the programming and won. Maybe she's waiting for a chance to break free. Sarah composed a message, encrypted it using protocols from the medic files, and sent it to every contact associated with Subject 4. Either way, we're about to find out. The pursuing vehicles were gaining. Sarah could see armed personnel in the beds of the trucks, weapons raised. They would open fire soon, disable the engine, capture the escapees. Take them back for reconditioning. Make them disappear like Doc Brennan had disappeared. Sarah's phone buzzed, a response to her message, 3 words. I remember help. Chen saw it and started crying. She's alive, she's still in there. And she's about to save our lives. Sarah showed Ramos the coordinates that came with the message. Head there, 20 miles northwest, abandoned airfield. That's the wrong direction. We should be going towards civilization. Trust me. Ramos changed course. The pursuing vehicles adjusted, closing the distance. Sarah watched them come, counting seconds, waiting. Then she heard it, the distant thump of helicopter rotors. Not military, something else. Civilian markings but military-grade equipment, coming in fast from the north. Sarah smiled. Subject 4 had friends in interesting places. The helicopter descended between them and their pursuers, kicking up walls of dust. The pursuing vehicles skidded to a stop, confused. And in that moment of hesitation, the truck carrying Sarah and her companions disappeared into the night. They reached the airfield as dawn broke over the desert. The helicopter was already there, rotors still spinning. A woman in FBI tactical gear stepped out. She looked exactly like the photo in Chen's file. Older, harder, but unmistakably Lily Chen. Maya Chen ran to her sister and they collapsed into each other's arms. Both crying, both broken, both somehow impossibly alive. Sarah watched them reunite and felt something crack inside her chest. Not pain, something deeper. The realization that family wasn't what you remembered. It was what you chose, who you chose to protect, who you chose to fight for. Lily Chen approached Sarah, her expression unreadable. You're subject 7, Rachel Kovacs. I'm Sarah Mitchell. The rest is just history I can't remember. Then we're the same. I barely remember being Lily Chen. The programming took that from me, but I held on to one thing. She looked at her sister. Love. The one thing they couldn't erase. The one thing that kept me human even when they tried to make me a weapon. What happens now? Sarah asked. Now we fight back. I have evidence from my deployment. You have the hard drives. Together, we have enough to expose medic protocol to people who can actually do something about it. Congressional oversight, inspector general, people who still believe in accountability. And the ones who authorized this, the people at the top. Lily's smile was cold. We find them, we name them, and we make sure everyone knows what they did. Sarah held up the hard drives. Then let's get started. They boarded the helicopter. As they lifted off, Sarah looked back at Fort Sentinel burning on the horizon. 93 soldiers had been at that base. Some had escaped. Some had died. Many were still trapped in their programming, unable to break free. The war was far from over. But for the first time since waking up in that hospital 2 years ago with no memory of who she'd been, Sarah Mitchell felt like she had a purpose that was truly her own. Not Subject 7's purpose, not Rachel Kovacs' purpose. Hers. And she would use it to burn medic protocol to the ground. The helicopter climbed higher, leaving the smoke and ruins behind. Inside, Maya and Lily Chen held each other, whispering words Sarah couldn't hear. Words that didn't need to be heard to be understood. Ramos sat across from Sarah, cleaning blood from his hands with methodical precision. When he finished, he looked up and met her stare. So what are you going to call yourself? He asked. Sarah Mitchell or Rachel Kovacs? Sarah touched the bandage on her neck. The implant was gone. The voice was silent. For the first time in 2 years, maybe longer, her thoughts were entirely her own. Sarah, she said, I choose Sarah not because it's real, but because it's mine. Ramos nodded. Then Sarah it is. The helicopter banked north, toward Washington, toward answers, toward a reckoning that had been 2 years in the making. Behind them, the sun rose over Texas, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. A new day, a new beginning, a new chance to be something other than what they'd been made to be. Sarah closed her eyes and let herself believe, just for a moment, that they might actually win this. That justice might actually be possible. That the truth, once revealed, might actually set them free. 18 hours until they reached Washington. 18 hours to plan their next move. 18 hours before they took on the most powerful conspiracy in the American military. But for now, for these few precious minutes, Sarah Mitchell allowed herself to rest. The fight would come soon enough. The safe house was a converted warehouse in eastern Nevada, 3 hours from anywhere that mattered. Concrete walls thick enough to stop rifle rounds. No windows. Single reinforced door with enough locks to secure a bank vault. And inside, 5 people who had died and been reborn as weapons, now trying to remember what it meant to be human. Sarah Mitchell sat at a folding table, the stolen hard drives connected to a laptop that Lily Chen had provided. The screen displayed file after file of evidence. Names, dates, medical procedures, psychological conditioning protocols, everything medic protocol had done to create sleeper agents from American soldiers. Everything except the one thing that mattered most. Who had authorized it? Lily stood behind Sarah, her FBI credentials lying on the table beside a burner phone. She had changed out of tactical gear into civilian clothes, but she still moved like a federal agent. Precise, controlled, alert for threats that might materialize from nowhere. The files are compartmentalized, Lily said. Whoever designed this program knew about information security. They kept the authorization chain separate from operational data. What we have proves medic protocol exists, proves what they did to us, but it doesn't prove who ordered it. Across the room, Jake Ramos cleaned weapons he'd acquired from sources Sarah didn't want to know about. 3 pistols, 2 rifles, enough ammunition to fight a small war. He hadn't said much since they'd arrived 12 hours ago, just worked in silence, preparing for whatever came next. Maya Chen sat in the corner with her tablet, running programs Sarah didn't understand, trying to crack encryption, trying to find the missing pieces. Her sister had given her access to FBI databases, but even that hadn't been enough to identify the people at the top of medic protocol. And Captain David Torres lay on a cot near the back wall, still unconscious from the sedative Sarah had administered a lifetime ago. She had checked his vitals every hour, stable, breathing normally, but his implant was still active, still trying to reassert control even while his body slept. Sarah had considered removing it, had the scalpel ready, but something held her back. Torres deserved the choice she'd made, deserved to decide for himself whether to risk the surgery or live with the programming. If he ever woke up. "We need a plan," Ramos said without looking up from his work. "We have evidence but no way to distribute it safely. The moment we go public, whoever runs medic protocol will know. They'll come for us with everything they have." "Then we don't go public," Sarah said. "Not yet." Lily turned. "What are you suggesting?" Sarah pulled up a file on the laptop. Subject roster, 12 names total. She and Lily were numbers 7 and 4. Torres wasn't on the list, which meant his implant served a different purpose. Monitoring maybe, or insurance to keep him compliant. "There are 12 of us," Sarah said. 12 subjects conditioned and deployed across the country. Most are still under medic protocol control, still believing the false identities they were given, still waiting for activation orders. "You want to find them," Maya said quietly. "Warn them, free them." "I want to give them the same choice I had. Fight the programming or submit to it. Either way, it should be their decision." Ramos loaded a magazine with precise movements. Noble, also suicidal. The moment we contact other subjects, medic protocol tracks us. We'd be lucky to free two before they shut us down. Unless we move faster than they can respond. Lily pulled up a map on her phone marked locations. I know where 3 subjects are deployed. Subject 1 is in Virginia, military intelligence analyst at the Pentagon. Subject 8 is in California, nuclear weapons specialist at Edwards Air Force Base. Subject 11 is in Georgia, instructor at Fort Benning. Sarah studied the map. 3 targets, spread across the country, all in high-security military installations where medic protocol could monitor them constantly. We can't extract them from those locations, she said. Too much scrutiny, too many eyes. We don't extract them, we activate them. Lily's expression was cold, clinical, the look of someone who had made hard decisions before. Medic protocol uses activation codes to trigger the implants. I still remember mine from when I was fully conditioned. If the codes follow the same pattern, I can calculate the others. And then what? Ramos asked. We trigger their programming and hope they're strong enough to fight it like Mitchell did. We trigger their programming and intercept them before their handlers can give orders. Create a window where they're activated but confused. Then we tell them the truth. Show them the evidence. Give them a reason to resist. Sarah thought about her own activation. The pain, the voice in her skull commanding obedience. The desperate fight to hold onto herself against programming designed to erase everything she was. Most people wouldn't survive that, wouldn't be strong enough to resist. The activation would overwhelm them, and they'd become exactly what medic protocol wanted: perfect slaves. But some would fight. Some would cling to fragments of who they'd been, and those were the ones worth saving. How long do we have? Sarah asked. Lily checked her phone. Fort Sentinel's destruction will be classified as a training accident, but someone high up will know the truth, know that subjects escaped with evidence. They'll activate the remaining subjects within 48 hours, use them to hunt us down or eliminate anything that could expose the program. 48 hours. 2 days to find 12 people scattered across America. 2 days to convince them they weren't who they thought they were. 2 days to build an army of broken soldiers strong enough to fight the people who had broken them. Sarah looked at the others. Ramos still methodically preparing weapons. Maya, fingers flying across her tablet. Lily standing like a sentinel between them and the door. And Tors unconscious but alive, his chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. This was her team, her family. Not the one she'd been born into because she couldn't remember that life. Not the one the army had given her because that had been a lie, but the one she'd chosen, the one worth fighting for. We start with Subject 1, Sarah said. If we can free someone from inside the Pentagon, it sends a message. Medic protocol isn't untouchable, and whoever runs it isn't as safe as they think. Lily nodded. I'll make the arrangements. We move in 6 hours. The flight to Washington was tense and silent. Lily had arranged civilian transport through contacts Sarah didn't question. Private plane. No passenger manifest. No questions asked. The kind of arrangement that came from years of working in the shadows. Sarah spent the flight reviewing Subject 1's file. Real name, Michael Parks. Former Army Ranger, captured during a black operation in Syria 4 years ago, presumed dead, actually conditioned and deployed as Thomas Bradley, intelligence analyst with top secret clearance. The file included photos, Parks in his Ranger days, lean, hard, the kind of soldier who could survive anything, and Bradley at his Pentagon desk, softer, civilian clothes, reading glasses. The transformation was remarkable. They're good at this, Sarah said to Lily, taking warriors and turning them into something else, something useful but forgettable. That's the point. Sleeper agents aren't supposed to stand out. They're supposed to blend in, be invisible until activation. Lily was cleaning a pistol with the same mechanical efficiency Ramos had shown. When I was first deployed as Laura Winters, I hated it. The FBI work felt fake, playing at being a federal agent when I knew I was really just a puppet. But over time, the cover became comfortable, started to feel real. What changed? Maya, Lily's movements paused on the pistol. I saw her photo in a case file, missing persons investigation for a different matter, but there she was, my little sister, all grown up. And something clicked. Some part of me that the conditioning hadn't erased recognized her, remembered that I was supposed to protect her. You never made contact. Couldn't. Medic protocol was monitoring everything. If I'd reached out, they would have known, would have reconditioned me or worse. Lily resumed cleaning. So I waited, documented everything I could, prepared for the day when someone would be strong enough to fight back. When you sent that message from Fort Sentinel, I knew that day had come. The plane began its descent. Sarah looked out the window at Washington spreading below them, the capital of a nation she'd sworn to defend, a nation that had betrayed her and 11 others in the name of national security. Somewhere down there was Subject 1, a man who thought he was Thomas Bradley, a man who had no idea his entire life was a fabrication built on stolen memories and psychological torture. Sarah was about to destroy that comfortable lie, was about to show him the truth, and the truth would either free him or break him completely. Either way, she couldn't stop now. They landed at a private airfield 40 miles from the city. Ramos and Maya had arrived ahead of them, using a different route. Redundancy in case one team was compromised. Smart tactics from people who understood they were at war. The rendezvous point was a storage unit in Arlington. Ramos had set up a command post, surveillance equipment, communications gear, a laptop linked to Maya's tablet for real-time data. Bradley works at the Pentagon but lives in Alexandria, Maya said, pulling up maps and schedules. He commutes by metro, same route every day, creature of habit. Good, Lily said. Habits make people predictable. We'll intercept him at the Roslyn station during evening rush hour. Lots of people, easy to blend in. Sarah studied Bradley's photo again. How do we activate him without his handler knowing? We don't. The activation signal broadcasts to multiple receivers, medic protocol control, the handler, backup systems. Lily pulled out a device that looked like a modified phone. But I can create interference. Jam the handler's signal for about 90 seconds. That gives us a window to make contact before they realize something's wrong. 90 seconds. Not much time to convince a man his entire existence was a lie. What do we tell him? Sarah asked. The truth, fast and simple. You're not Thomas Bradley, you're Michael Parks, you were taken, conditioned, deployed, we have proof. Lily met Sarah's gaze. Then you show him the evidence and hope it's enough. They synchronized watches, reviewed the plan 3 more times. Then they moved out, splitting into 2 teams. Lily and Sarah would make contact. Ramos and Maya would provide overwatch and extraction if things went wrong. When things went wrong. The metro station was packed with commuters heading home. Sarah and Lily positioned themselves near the platform, focused scanning for Bradley. Sarah wore civilian clothes, jeans and a jacket, nothing that would stand out. Lily was in business attire, looking like another federal worker heading home after a long day. At 1743, Thomas Bradley descended the escalator. He matched his photos exactly. Mid-30s, conservative suit, briefcase, the slightly distracted expression of someone mentally reviewing paperwork. He moved to his usual position on the platform, the same spot he stood every evening according to Maya's surveillance. Routine, predictable, controlled. Sarah's fingers went to the device in her pocket, the activation trigger Lily had built. One press and Bradley's implant would fire, would flood his system with commands, would turn him from civilian analyst to activated asset in seconds. She hesitated. This was what medic protocol did. Activated people without consent, took away their choice, turned them into weapons. Was she any better if she did the same thing? Lily touched her arm. It's the only way, you know that. Sarah pressed the button. Bradley stiffened. His briefcase dropped, clattering on the concrete. His focus went wide, pupils dilating. Around him, commuters stepped back, concerned but not intervening. Just another medical emergency in a city that saw dozens every day. Sarah moved fast, grabbed Bradley's arm, steadied him. "Thomas Bradley, look at me." His head turned with mechanical precision. "I don't know you." "Yes, you do. Deep down, you know me. We're the same." Sarah pulled him toward a bench away from the crowd. Lily flanked them, blocking sight lines. "Your name isn't Thomas Bradley, it's Michael Parks. You're a ranger. You were captured. They did things to your mind, made you forget, but I can prove it." Bradley's face was pale, sweat beaded on his forehead. "I don't understand. Who are you?" "Someone like you, someone they turned into a weapon." Sarah pulled out her phone, showed him files from the database, his real photo, his service record, medical documentation of his conditioning. "This is who you really are. This is what they took from you." Bradley stared at the screen, his grip trembled. "No, this is some kind of trick, psychological warfare. I'm an analyst. I work at the Pentagon. I have security clearance. They wouldn't." "They would, they did, to you, to me, to 11 others." Sarah grabbed his face, forced him to meet her stare. "Listen to me. In about 60 seconds, your handler is going to override my interference and give you orders. You'll follow those orders without question unless you fight it, unless you hold on to who you really are." "I don't know who I really am." "Then figure it out, fast." Sarah released him, stepped back. "Because if you can't, you'll spend the rest of your life as someone else's puppet." Bradley's focus cleared for just a moment. Sarah saw recognition there, saw fragments of Michael Parks surfacing through the conditioning, saw him reaching for something buried deep. Then his expression went blank, and Sarah knew the handler had regained control. "Subject 1, Bradley said in a flat monotone. "Directive acknowledged. Eliminate hostile contacts, retrieve evidence." He moved with startling speed, combat training erupting through the analyst's careful facade. His fingers went to a concealed weapon Sarah hadn't known he was carrying. Lily was faster. She had her pistol out and pressed against Bradley's spine before he could draw. "Don't. We're not your enemy. The people who did this to you are." Bradley froze. The programming warred with the information Sarah had shown him. Two competing realities trying to occupy the same mind. "Michael Parks," Sarah said softly, "Army Ranger. You had a sister named Jennifer. You grew up in Ohio. You wanted to be a teacher before you enlisted. These are facts, real facts, not the lies they implanted." "Stop," Bradley's voice cracked. "Please stop." "I can't, because if I stop, you'll kill me, kill Lily. Go back to your apartment and forget this ever happened. Is that what you want?" "I want," Bradley's palms went to his head. The implant was firing constantly now, trying to overwhelm him with programming. "I want it to stop. The voice, make it stop." "I can't make it stop. Only you can. You have to choose, submit or fight." Bradley fell to his knees. Commuters were staring now, some filming on their phones. Security would arrive soon. They needed to move. "Choose," Sarah said, "now." Bradley looked up at her. Tears streamed down his face. And when he spoke, his voice was his own, broken but human. Help me. They extracted him through metro tunnels Maya had mapped, avoided cameras, avoided security, got him to a vehicle Ramos had waiting 3 blocks away. By the time Pentagon security realized Thomas Bradley had disappeared, they were halfway to the safe house. Bradley sat in the back seat, shaking. The implant was still active, but he was fighting it, holding onto the fragments of Michael Parks Sarah had given him. It wouldn't last. Eventually, the programming would reassert itself, or he'd need the same brutal surgery Sarah had endured. But for now, he was free, and he was theirs. That was too close, Lily said as they drove. Handler response was faster than I calculated. They're adapting, learning from Fort Sentinel. Which means the next extraction will be harder, Ramos said from the driver's seat. They'll be expecting us. Sarah looked at Bradley. How many more do we need before we have enough? Enough for what? To go after whoever runs medic protocol, to expose them publicly in a way they can't cover up. Lily was quiet for a long moment. 3 more at minimum. 5 would be better. We need enough witnesses that they can't dismiss us as mentally unstable. Enough evidence that mainstream media has to cover it. 3 more, out of 11 remaining subjects. Long odds, but better than what Sarah had faced at Fort Sentinel. They drove through the night. Bradley eventually fell into unconsciousness, exhausted by the effort of resisting his implant. Sarah monitored his vitals, kept him stable, wondered how many more extractions she could survive before medic protocol found a way to stop them. The answer came sooner than she expected. Maya's tablet pinged with an alert. She checked it and her face went pale. We have a problem. Multiple subjects just went active simultaneously. All 8 remaining ones. Coordinated activation. Where? Lily asked. Everywhere. Virginia, California, Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, they're mobilizing. Sarah felt ice in her stomach. They're not sending subjects after us. They're activating them for something else. What? She thought about medic protocol's purpose, creating sleeper agents, placing them in positions of influence, waiting for the moment when they could be used to maximum effect. That moment had arrived. They're staging a coup, Sarah said quietly, activating subjects in key military installations, using them to seize control, create chaos, then step in with a solution that gives whoever runs this program exactly what they want. Ramos pulled the vehicle over. That's insane. You can't overthrow the U.S. government with 8 people. You can if those 8 people are in the right positions. Pentagon intelligence analyst, nuclear weapons specialist, training instructor who can activate entire units. What if there are more than 12 subjects? What if the database we stole is incomplete? Lily was already on her phone. I'm calling my FBI contacts, warning them. If medic protocol is making a move, we need federal response immediately. But Sarah had a sinking feeling it wouldn't matter. Medic protocol had been planning this for years, had positioned assets carefully, had thought through every contingency. They weren't just fighting a program anymore. They were fighting a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military and government. And they were running out of time. The safe house was no longer safe. Lily's FBI contacts had gone dark, either compromised or unwilling to believe the story. Maya's attempts to reach outside authorities met the same wall of silence. Medic protocol had lockdown protocols, ways to isolate threats, ways to control the narrative. They needed a different approach. Sarah stood over Captain Torres, who had finally regained consciousness. His awareness was clear. The sedative had worn off, but the implant remained dormant for now. Captain, Sarah said, I need to know something. When you investigated medic protocol, what did you find about the command structure? Tors sat up slowly, wincing. Files were compartmentalized, but I found references to an oversight committee, code name Olympus, 7 members, military and civilian leadership. They approved medic protocol as a black budget program after 9/11. Names. Never found them, just the code name and authorization levels. Tors looked at Bradley, unconscious again after another fight with his implant. You're planning to expose them, make this public. I'm planning to stop them. Exposure is just the tool. You'll need more than evidence. You'll need leverage, something they can't ignore or suppress. Sarah thought about the 8 activated subjects, about medic protocol mobilizing for whatever final play they'd planned, about the ticking clock that counted down to a moment when everything could change. Then we give them something they can't ignore, she said. We go public in a way they can't suppress, broadcast everything on live national television. Lily shook her head. That's suicide. Security will be intense, especially if medic protocol anticipates this move. Then we don't give them time to anticipate. Sarah checked her watch. 16 hours until the news cycle reset. 16 hours before morning shows started broadcasting. We have enough time to reach Atlanta, prepare, and at dawn we make our move. Atlanta, Ramos asked. Maya turned her tablet around, showed them a building schematic. CNN headquarters. They have satellite uplinks, global reach. If we can get inside and take over their broadcast for even 5 minutes, we can reach millions of people simultaneously. Lily studied the schematic. Security will be intense. Then we move fast and we move smart. Sarah looked at each of them in turn. Bradley fighting his programming even while unconscious. Tors awake but still implanted. Maya determined to save her sister and everyone like her. Lily, federal agent turned rebel. Ramos, soldier without a country. And herself, Sarah Mitchell, or Rachel Kovacs, or whoever she really was beneath the layers of conditioning and false memories. All of us, she said, this ends in Atlanta, one way or another. The drive to Atlanta took 12 hours. They rotated drivers, maintained silence, each person lost in their own thoughts about what came next. Sarah used the time to write, not in her journal with its shifting handwriting and contaminated memories, but on a laptop with fresh files, a testimony, everything she remembered about medic protocol, everything they'd discovered, names, dates, procedures, the truth in clinical detail. When she finished, she encrypted it and sent copies to 3 separate locations. Insurance in case they didn't survive Atlanta. Tors read over her shoulder. You write like a soldier, precise, factual, clinical. Maybe that's who I really am, beneath all the programming. Or maybe the programming revealed something that was already there. Tors shifted, his implant causing him visible discomfort. I've been thinking about what you said, about choice, about deciding who we want to be regardless of what was done to us. And I want you to remove my implant before we reach Atlanta, before 0 hour. His stare was steady. I want to make this choice with my own mind, not with their voice in my skull. Sarah looked at Lily. Do we have time? We make time, pull over at the next rest stop. I'll assist. The surgery took 40 minutes. Sarah worked with the same steady grip that had saved lives at Fort Sentinel, cut through tissue, located the implant, severed the connections to Tor's nervous system. Throughout it all, Tor stayed conscious, refused anesthetic, wanted to feel every second of his liberation. When Sarah pulled the implant free, Tors gasped, then laughed, a sound so full of relief and joy that everyone in the vehicle felt it. It's gone, he whispered. The voice, the pressure, all of it. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked, bandaging the wound. "Like myself, finally." Torres sat up despite the pain. "Like Captain David Torres, United States Army, and I'm ready to finish this." They reached Atlanta at dawn. The city was waking up, commuters heading to work, unaware that somewhere in the towers and traffic, 8 medic protocol subjects were preparing for activation, unaware that their world was about to change. CNN headquarters rose against the morning sky, glass and steel, a fortress of information. Sarah studied it from their position 3 blocks away. "Perimeter security," Lily noted. "Armed guards, metal detectors, credential checks. We're not getting in the front door." "Then we don't use the front door." Maya pulled up building plans. "Service entrance here. Deliveries come through at 0700. We can slip in with the morning trucks." And once inside. Studio 7 is on the 3rd floor. They broadcast the morning show from there. Live. National feed. Maya's fingers traced routes on her screen. "If we can get to that studio and take over the broadcast, we'll have direct access to millions of viewers." Sarah looked at Torres. "How long do we need?" 5 minutes to show the evidence, another 5 for testimony. He met her focus. 10 minutes to change everything. 10 minutes. Sarah had survived longer at Fort Sentinel, had fought through worse odds, but this time felt different. This time wasn't about survival. It was about truth, about making sure the world knew what medic protocol had done, even if telling that truth destroyed her in the process. "Positions," Lily said. She distributed weapons, small caliber, concealable. "We move in 2 teams. Sarah and Torres go to the studio. The rest of us hold the perimeter, keep security occupied, buy you the time you need." "What about the subjects?" Ramos asked. "The 8 already activated, they'll come for us." "Let them. The more chaos we create, the harder it is for medic protocol to control the narrative." Lily checked her pistol. "This was always going to end in fire. We just get to choose where it burns." They moved at 07:15, slipped in with a delivery truck. Maya's hacking had created false credentials that got them past the first checkpoint. After that, it was speed and audacity. Sarah and Torres went straight for the stairs, avoided elevators and cameras when possible. When they encountered security, Torres used his command voice and military bearing. "Medical emergency, 3rd floor, move." It worked twice. The 3rd time the guard was smarter, reached for his radio. Ramos, covering from behind, took him down with a sedative dart. Quiet, professional, but alarms would trigger soon. They reached Studio 7 at 07:28. The morning show was in progress. 2 anchors discussing weather and traffic, unaware of the armed group entering through the back. Sarah stepped onto the set. The anchors froze, cameras swiveled, and somewhere in the control room directors were screaming. "Good morning," Sarah said to the cameras. "To America, to the world. My name is Sarah Mitchell, or maybe it's Rachel Kovacs. I'm not sure anymore. What I am sure about is that the United States military has been conducting illegal human experimentation for over a decade, and I have proof." Security burst through the doors. Lily and Ramos met them. Gunfire erupted. Not lethal rounds, warning shots, suppressions, buying time. Sarah pulled out the hard drives, connected them to the studio computer. Files began uploading to the broadcast feed. Names, photos, medical records, everything. "These are 12 American soldiers who were kidnapped, tortured, and turned into sleeper agents," Sarah continued. "Their names are Michael Parks, Jennifer Stevens, Carlos Rodriguez, Lily Chen." She read them all, every name, every identity stolen. Medic protocol erased who they were and replaced them with lies, made them believe they were different people. Also, they could be activated when needed, turned into weapons. Torres stepped beside her, showed his own file on camera. I was Captain David Torres. I tried to investigate. They implanted me to keep me quiet, but we removed the implants. We fought back, and now we're here to make sure everyone knows the truth. Outside the studio, Sarah could hear more gunfire, shouts, the sounds of a building in chaos. Medic protocol response teams would be coming, federal agents, maybe even military units. The clock was ticking. The people who authorized this program call themselves Olympus, Sarah said. 7 members, military and civilian leadership. They think they're untouchable, think they can make this story disappear like they made us disappear. She looked directly into the camera. They're wrong. An explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered. Backup power kicked in, but Sarah knew what it meant. Medic protocol had arrived. "We don't have much time," Torres said. "Finish it." Sarah took a breath. If you're watching this and you recognize your face in these files, if you remember a different life before the one you're living, if you've ever felt like you're not who you think you are, fight back, resist. You're not alone. The studio doors exploded inward. Armed men in tactical gear poured in, not security, not police, military contractors, the kind medic protocol used for wet work. Sarah raised her palms but kept talking. "My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I choose who I am. I choose to be someone who fights back, who tells the truth, who refuses to be a weapon." A contractor grabbed her, forced her to her knees. The broadcast cut to black, but the files kept uploading, kept spreading across the internet. Unstoppable. Torres fought, took down 2 contractors before they subdued him. Around them, the studio was a war zone, spent brass, blood, the wreckage of furniture and equipment. And somewhere in the chaos, Lily's voice over comms. "Files are everywhere, Twitter, Facebook, news sites, they can't stop it. You did it, Mitchell, you won." Sarah felt the contractor's gun against her skull, felt the cold certainty of death approaching, but she smiled. Because he was right, they had won not the battle but the war. Medic protocol was exposed. The truth was out. And even if they killed everyone in this building, they couldn't put that genie back in the bottle. The contractor's finger tightened on the trigger. And then came a voice Sarah hadn't expected to hear. "Stand down now." The contractors hesitated, turned, and standing in the doorway was a woman in her 60s, gray hair, business suit, the bearing of someone who had commanded respect for decades. "I said stand down, soldier." Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "That's a direct order." The contractors lowered their weapons, confused but obedient. The woman walked to Sarah, looked down at her with an expression that mixed disappointment and something else. Respect, maybe. "Specialist Mitchell, or should I call you Rachel Kovacs?" The woman's smile was thin. "You've caused quite a lot of trouble for a program that was supposed to remain classified for another 30 years. "Who are you?" Sarah asked. "Senator Margaret Rhodes, one of the 7 members of Olympus." The senator gestured and the contractors pulled Sarah and Torres to their feet. "We created medic protocol to protect this nation, to create assets that could operate anywhere, do anything without the messy complications of conscience or loyalty conflicts. You were supposed to be our greatest success. Subject 7, perfect conditioning, perfect integration. I was supposed to be your slave. You were supposed to be a hero, someone who could do what others couldn't, stop threats before they materialized, save American lives through actions that would never be acknowledged." Rhodes shook her head. "Instead, you've destroyed years of work, exposed classified programs, put national security at risk." "I exposed crimes, torture, illegal experimentation on American citizens." Semantics, history will judge us, but it won't be you who writes that history. Rhodes nodded to the contractors. Take them. Olympus wants them for debriefing. After that, well, accidents happen. The contractors moved forward. Sarah prepared to fight, knew she wouldn't win but refused to go quietly. Then the windows exploded. Federal agents poured in through every entrance. FBI tactical teams, Homeland Security, even military police, all with weapons raised, all shouting commands. And leading them was Lily Chen, no longer in civilian clothes but in full FBI raid gear, her credentials held high. Senator Rhodes, you're under arrest for conspiracy, kidnapping, torture, and treason. The rest of Olympus is being taken into custody as we speak. Lily's voice was ice cold. This building is now a federal crime scene. Anyone who interferes will be prosecuted. Rhodes's face went pale. You can't, I have immunity, executive privilege. Not anymore. Your broadcast confession was recorded. Your files are public, and every federal agency has been investigating Olympus for the past hour. Lily moved to Sarah, cut her restraints. It's over. The contractors were disarmed and arrested. Rhodes was led away in handcuffs, still protesting. And Sarah collapsed into Lily's arms, finally allowing herself to believe it was real. They had won, actually won. 3 months later, Sarah stood in front of Congress. The hearing room was packed with media, politicians, and survivors. 11 former medic protocol subjects sat in the gallery behind her, free, whole, rebuilding lives that had been stolen. Michael Parks had returned to his family in Ohio, was relearning who he'd been before the Army, before the conditioning. Lily Chen had been reinstated to the FBI with commendations, was leading the task force investigating medic protocols' international connections. Captain Torres had retired with full honors, was consulting with the Pentagon on ethics oversight for classified programs. And Sarah sat at the witness table, preparing to give testimony that would shape how America understood what had been done in the name of national security. The chairman of the committee leaned forward. Ms. Mitchell, or should we call you Ms. Kovacs? Mitchell is fine, sir. It's the name I chose. The identity I built after the programming was removed. I'd like to keep it. Very well. Ms. Mitchell, in your own words, please tell us what medic protocol did to you. Sarah took a breath, looked at the cameras, at the people watching across the country, and she told the truth, all of it, every detail, every violation, every moment of pain and confusion and loss. When she finished, the room was silent. What would you like to see happen now? The chairman asked. Sarah had prepared for this question, had thought about it for 3 months, had discussed it with the other survivors. I want accountability, trials for everyone in Olympus, prison sentences, not administrative punishments. She paused. But more than that, I want change. I want programs like Medic Protocol to be impossible. I want oversight that actually has teeth. I want soldiers to be treated as people, not as assets to be manipulated. And for yourself, what do you want? Sarah thought about that, about who she was now. Not Subject 7, not Rachel Kovacs, not even entirely Sarah Mitchell. She was someone new, someone forged in fire and trauma and the choice to fight back, someone who had looked into the abyss of what human beings could do to each other and refused to become a monster. I want to help others like me, she said finally, other victims of illegal programs, other soldiers who were betrayed by the system they served. I want to make sure no one else has to go through what we did. The chairman nodded. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Your courage in coming forward has already prevented countless future victims. On behalf of this committee and the American people, thank you for your service. The hearing adjourned. Sarah walked out into the sunlight. Ramos and Maya were waiting for her on the steps. "How do you feel?" Maya asked. "Free," Sarah smiled. "For the first time in years, actually free." They walked together through Washington, past monuments to democracy, past buildings where laws were made and justice was supposed to be served. And Sarah felt something she hadn't felt since waking up in that hospital bed 2 years ago with no memory of her past. Hoping. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tours. Anonymous tip just came in. Reference to something called Project Olympus Phase 2, possible medic protocol successor program. Interested in investigating. Sarah looked at the message, then at her friends, her family, the people who had fought beside her and survived. "What do you think?" she asked. Ramos shrugged. "We saved 12 people, but how many others are out there in programs we don't know about? How many more secrets?" Maya pulled up her tablet. "I can start researching, see what's buried in classified databases." Sarah thought about the easy path. Retirement, therapy, rebuilding a normal life. She had earned that, had sacrificed enough. But then she thought about the people still trapped in systems like medic protocol, still suffering, still waiting for someone to care enough to fight for them. "Tell Tours we're in," Sarah said. "But this time we do it right. Legal oversight, federal authorization, no more operating in shadows." "So you're starting a task force?" Maya asked. "I'm starting a promise that we'll never let this happen again, that will protect the people who can't protect themselves." Sarah looked at the Capitol building. "Someone has to stand between power and the powerless. Might as well be us." They walked into the city together. 3 people who had every reason to give up, who had been broken and remade and broken again, who had chosen to keep fighting anyway. Behind them, the sun set on a day that had changed history. Ahead, the darkness held new challenges, new battles, new chances to make a difference. Sarah Mitchell was ready for all of it. She had been a weapon, had been a victim, had been a pawn in someone else's game. Now she was something else entirely. She was someone who chose, who fought, who refused to be anything other than exactly who she decided to be. And that choice, more than anything else, made her free. The walk back to their hotel took them past the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Sarah paused there, looking at the names etched in black granite. Thousands of them. Soldiers who had served and died. Soldiers whose sacrifice would never be forgotten. She thought of the soldiers at Fort Sentinel, the ones who hadn't made it out, the ones still trapped in their programming. Their names would be added to a different kind of memorial, one for victims of their own government's betrayal. But they would be remembered. Sarah would make sure of that. "You okay?" Ramos asked quietly. "Yeah." Sarah touched the granite, feeling the smooth coldness under her fingertips. "Just thinking about what we owe them, the ones we couldn't save. We owe them the truth, and we gave them that." "Did we, or did we just scratch the surface?" Sarah pulled her hand back. "Tours is right. If there's a phase 2, if medic protocol was just one program among many, then our work isn't done." Maya joined them at the memorial. "It might never be done. There will always be people who think the ends justify the means, who think they can play God with other people's lives. Then there will always be people like us to stop them." Sarah turned away from the memorial. "Come on, we have work to do." They returned to their hotel room, which had become an impromptu command center. Laptops, files, evidence bags, the detritus of their investigation spread across every surface. Tours had sent more information about Project Olympus Phase 2. Sarah read through it, her expression growing darker with each line. "It's worse than we thought," she said. Phase 2 isn't a successor program, it's an expansion. Medic Protocol was the pilot. They're planning to scale it up. Hundreds of subjects, maybe thousands. Ramos looked over her shoulder. When? Timeline suggests 18 months. They're waiting for the scandal to die down, for media attention to shift, for people to forget. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then they'll start again, with better safeguards, better conditioning, better ways to hide what they're doing. Unless we stop them first. Lily had entered without them noticing. She'd changed out of her FBI gear into civilian clothes. I brought reinforcements. 3 other people entered behind her. Former medic protocol subjects, all freed, all angry, all ready to fight. We heard about Phase 2, one of them said. Subject 2, Jennifer Stevens, former Navy SEAL. We're not letting them do to anyone else what they did to us. Sarah looked at the growing group. 11 survivors, 1 FBI agent, 1 Army sergeant, 1 captain, 1 tech specialist. And herself. 13 people against a conspiracy that had operated in the shadows for over a decade. 13 people with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. The odds weren't good. But they'd beaten worse odds before. All right, Sarah said. Then let's get to work. We have 18 months to shut down Phase 2 before it starts. That means we need to identify every person involved, every facility, every source of funding. We need to build an airtight case that can't be dismissed or buried. And if we can't, Stevens asked, then we do what we did in Atlanta. We burn it down in public where everyone can see. They worked through the night, building timelines, tracing connections, following the money. By dawn, they had the skeleton of a plan. It would take months, would require resources they didn't have and cooperation from agencies that might not want to help, would put them all at risk of retaliation from people with the power to make them disappear. But it was possible. And possible was enough. Sarah stood at the window as the sun rose over Washington. The city was waking up again. Another day, another chance to do the right thing. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. You think you won, you think medic protocol is finished, but you only exposed one branch of a much larger tree. We're still here, still watching, still waiting. And when the time is right, we'll show you just how deep this really goes. Sleep well, Subject 7. Sarah stared at the message for a long moment. Then she deleted it. Let them watch, let them wait, let them think they had the advantage. Because Sarah Mitchell had something they didn't. She had the truth, she had allies, she had purpose. And most importantly, she had choice. She chose to fight. She chose to protect. She chose to be free. And no threat, no matter how powerful, could take that away from her. Sarah turned from the window and rejoined her team. The war wasn't over. But neither was she. And together, they would make sure that Medic Protocol, Project Olympus Phase 2, and every other conspiracy hiding in the shadows would face the one thing they couldn't survive. Daylight.